Hello and welcome to the Luscious Living Podcast. I'm your host, Celine Vilgan, holistic nutrition consultant and the founder of Luscious Living, where personal growth meets wellness. Ladies, we've heard that PMS is a feminine curse, and it's time to bust that myth. Did you know that your period is actually a sacred and beautiful time for you? It doesn't feel like that when you have symptoms of cramps, bloating, nausea, headaches, and more. And I'm here to tell you it does not have to be that way. Did you know that you can use nutrition to ease those symptoms? Did you know that you have 4 different phases of your menstrual cycle? Yes, you can learn to optimize each of these phases and really understand your body and understand why you're more motivated in some times of the month and more excited to work out or more wanting to stay in, or you are just more intuitive in certain phases as well. Learn to understand your body, love yourself even more. This is all talked about in my best-selling book, The Painless Period Guide. Grab a copy for you and a friend. The link to purchase is in the description. Welcome everyone to the Luscious Living Podcast. I am so excited to have 2 very special guests here in Calgary with me today, and it is Aditi and Danyelle. And I connected with them because I have a lot of clients who really go through the grieving process, the trauma really of stillbirth, of miscarriage. And there are some pretty amazing women who specialize in caring for families and women during this very important time. So I wanted to have them on the show today. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Yes, thanks for having us.
I love it. So how do you describe what it is that both of you do for families and women?
Oh, that's a big question. I think we do a lot for families and people that are navigating pregnancy and infant loss. I think that by existing as an organization, I think we give permission to these individuals to understand that what they're going through is normal and that there is indeed a space for them. It validates everything that they're feeling, and it validates their journey and their babies that are no longer here. I think we bring awareness by existing as an organization. We bring awareness to the mental health and various other impacts that loss has on an individual and families and society as a whole. And then I think in our individual programs, we have a lot of peer support programming, so that peer support helps people become a part of a community. None of us want to be a part of this community. This is never a community that any of us signed up for or wanted to be a part of. And it is one of the most healing and life-affirming communities, I think, that are out there. Connecting to peers is so powerful. And then for our programming too, we give, for our mental health program, we really support in a specialized way the mental health component of loss. So a big question, but I think an important one. I don't know, Danyelle, if there's something I missed or that you would like to add to that.
I look at us, what we try to do each day is not only to support the families, but to break down that stigma around loss and grief and work daily to normalize it. The loss of a pregnancy, whether it's through miscarriage, stillbirth, neonatal death, it all affects us. It affects us all differently, and affects us all through, different times. It can, sometimes it's stronger, sometimes the grief is a little bit less, but it affects us, and it doesn't just affect our emotions, it affects our whole body. And so I feel like Aditi strived before I met her and continues to really look at loss as a whole piece of you, not just, okay, well, you're grieving this, we're going to fix this. She works really hard to look at those somatic ways of, healing through the journey of grief, and she works really hard to normalize it. I support her in her work, but I'm going to be fully honest. We wouldn't be here without Aditi's willingness to break that stigma and to really have people realize that it's not just our mental, it's our whole self.
A very holistic approach. Yeah. So I am so grateful for the work that you do. I think I've said that like 10 times already, but really what would be the approach? So a woman is finding herself in the midst of this loss. And of course, Danyelle and I were just talking before recording, is just the stigma. And really in our society, we just want to have everything neatly wrapped in a bow. And, and so if a woman who's listening to this is just in the midst of this process, what would you advise her to do? How would you advise her to start? What would be step one?
Well, first I want to acknowledge that while of course we're a predominantly women-serving organization, we do understand that not everybody identifies as a woman, and not everyone impacted by loss is a woman. There's partners, and there's non-binary and trans folks that are also impacted by pregnancy and infant loss. So I just want to preface that, just so that anybody listening who falls underneath that category knows that their loss is also valid, and there are spaces out there that can help support them. The first step, what would I say the first step? Oh, that first step is so hard. I think that first step is the hardest step, right? Mm-hmm. Taking that first step. I think it's about, for me anyways, I think it is about the acknowledgement that, as Danyelle kind of said, that this isn't just something you get over. So if you have experienced a loss of any kind and you are feeling like it has impacted you, that is normal. And so, because I think there's a hesitancy in getting connected to support or getting connected to community, because we have this belief system that it's something we just kind of push through and push under the rug and get pregnant again, or, whatever that might look like. And so I think like the first step is like really acknowledging like, hey, I'm impacted by this, and maybe there's something I should be doing to address that. And then once you acknowledge that, then I would say starting out with maybe like a peer-to-peer connection, because like I said, there's nothing more powerful in this journey than having other parents who have navigated the same. Like, professional support, of course, is amazing, but there's a really powerful like recovery tool that isn't talked about, and that's peer support. So I would say connect to a peer support, and we have a helpline that you can text and you can chat on the web. So it's like completely anonymous. You can do it from the safety of your home. I think that is like really one of our first, the advice I would give is that would be a really good first like touching stone into the community and the other supports.
I love that. There's something about connecting with other humans who can relate to you. Yeah. And then just like in a whole way where you just held that space is acknowledged. And I really see that healing it's such a healing space. And I love that you offer also an anonymous way, because sometimes we're in a space where we want to be away from the world and hide and have the blankets over our head. Right. And so just have that kind of an option as well is so important, and still be acknowledged and be seen. So for partners, friends, those who are hearing of this loss, what's something that many people wish they could receive as support? And on the flip side, what's one of the worst things to say to someone who's just had a loss? And how can people who are on the outside but still want to be able to add value, how can they add value?
Well, I think there's like a couple of questions in there, because I think that partners experience the loss as well. So I think that number one is what I think we as an organization strive to do every day, is that we want to support the partners. Their role in this loss is not solely to support the birthing person, right? They're also experiencing grief and loss. And I think that a lot of people just think, oh, the partner, their role is to offer comfort to the birthing person. The birthing person has experienced loss differently than a partner, but both are navigating it together. They are navigating it differently, and the impacts are going to be different. But I think for partners in specific, it's giving them that permission to have support available. And again, raise that awareness to say, if you're a partner and you're experiencing loss, there is support available to you, and you can actually talk about it. And it is normal to feel impacted, because I think a lot of partners are like, especially in those early losses, well, any stage of the loss, but I think they kind of feel like they don't have a right to grieve. So, yeah, so I feel like the partner bit is a little bit different, and partners too can experience. So Danyelle and I have seen this. And sorry, Danyelle, if I said, I will speak for me. I will not speak for Danyelle. I have seen this with my partner, that years later, I thought he was doing well, well in his grief. And then years later, as we welcomed a living child, and years later, it turned out he wasn't. And it was because I had all the support. I had done all of the grief work, and he was on the sidelines, not doing any of it.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'll echo that. My partner's grief came out in very physical ways. Within a year of the stillbirth of my daughter, he was having what he thought were like heart attacks, but really what it was is like panic attacks and like all kinds of physical symptoms. So for me, my partner, it really became clear that he wasn't dealing with the grief because it was all very physical. And to this day, 10 years later, I can always tell when there's something going on because the physical symptoms start to show up. So although he's, quote, done some work, it's not necessarily the work that I have done, because he viewed the experience completely different. And I always try to preface it that he was on the outside when I was giving birth. So there are moments that I don't remember in the birthing of our daughter, Emelina, who passed away, that he does, because he was there. He was watching the nurses. He was watching the monitors. He was watching the midwife. I wasn't there. We then went on to have a subsequent pregnancy, and there was a lot of trauma that occurred in the room, not physical, but just in the delivery of that child. And again, he was listening, he was watching nurses, he was listening to doctors, he was watching monitors, all the stuff that I wasn't doing because I was in that moment. So he was seeing all this stuff. And when he was seeing this, he wasn't, what do you verbalize? Because in that moment, he didn't feel like he could verbalize what he was experiencing. It was, oh, well, let's just support myself. I'm the birthing individual. Let's just support me. So yeah, the partners is one area that I'm very passionate. Aditi and I are both very passionate about raising the visibility of them, because they are truly impacted. And it's usually, in our experience, years later that we're finding those impacts. And like I said, my husband, it's all physical. Like I can totally tell when he's when he's struggling with grief, because it is panic attacks. It is all kinds of physical ailments. Whereas with myself, I might get angry, I might cry, I might be emotional. His are completely opposite to what I would experience.
Wow. I appreciate you both sharing a snippet, of course, of that. Because I just learned something new, obviously, right? Because when we think of the birthing person, so are there a few suggestions or tools that the partner can take on to start the grieving process, or to really support themselves as well?
I think again, it's the same. It's the same. My thought process is the same for for the birthing person is if you are impacted by it, start to realize that that is normal. And start to realize that there are supports available to you, that it doesn't make you weak. You don't have to be the strong one. You are being strong, in fact, by addressing your own grief experience. There's a quote that says, grief is innately a selfish time, and it needs to be. And what I think what that means is in the throes of grief, couples often they try to lean on each other, and it usually doesn't work very well because you're grieving so individually. And so kind of separating yourself emotionally, mentally, and doing your own grief work, and then coming back together as a unit where you can grieve the experience together. But if we're only supporting one person, or we're ignoring our needs in it completely, we're probably setting us up for failure moving forward. Like there's a stat, 22% of couples that experience miscarriage will end up separated, and 40% who experience stillbirth will become separated. And so if you are actually, as a partner, it's quote unquote stronger to move towards your grief as an individual, and then later on come back in your partnership to support one another as a unit. Yeah, that's what I would say.
So powerful. I mean, I'm very familiar with grief in a completely different context, but it's true where it's like you try to, it is a very selfish time. It's like it's a grieving process, and especially it's a whole other podcast episode on the topic of grief itself. But I actually want to ask you, how can someone identify if something is to the point where it is in fact impacting them? Because so often I see this in my own practice where it's like, oh, this symptom is fine, this is fine, this is fine, I'm fine. But then, are there some identifying factors that someone can say, actually, I'm not okay, that's okay, and here's a place that I can go for support? But do you see any, or suggest some places to look at symptoms, for example, that can actually have someone say, okay, this is language I can use to move forward? Does that question make sense?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. From what I'm hearing you saying, like with your clients, they present with physical symptoms, and then, okay, now there's something happening, right? And I would say it's the same, right? Trauma is trauma. And so when you've experienced trauma, you're gonna, as Danyelle mentioned with her partner, some people experience it somatically, right? So there could be like, I can't sleep, or I'm having like chest pain or digestive issues or constant headaches, tension, that sort of thing. From the emotional standpoint, I would say like persistent kind of fear or anxiety would be definitely something, I think, or hypervigilance. Similar symptoms to trauma, right? Because that's the other piece, is pregnancy and infant loss is a trauma. And so if somebody is experiencing like, oh, I just feel anxious and I quote unquote don't know why, but they've had a loss, those are likely linked. Go ahead,
Mhm.
Danielle. I think you.
I was also going to say, I didn't feel the anxiety necessarily, but I felt angry all the time. And I could never classify why I always felt angry. Like
Mhm.
if you would ask my living child who's 17 or 16, she would say, "You're always angry, mom." And I was like, yeah, I was always angry. And I could
Mhm.
never pinpoint it. Like I would do the reading, I would exercise, I would do everything everybody told me, but I was still very angry. And for
Mhm.
me, grief shows up in anger because that's what I was taught. I was taught that anger and grief kind of go together. And
Mm.
so for me, if when I look back at my journey, I can pinpoint moments where I probably should have been looking for help and I
Mhm.
wasn't. Because I
Mhm.
could always say to myself, oh, it's just because you're stressed, Danielle. It's just
Exactly.
because your work. It's
Mhm.
just because you moved. It's just because, it's just because, it's just because. If I look back, the one point that when I was off kilter, when my partner was telling me I was off kilter, when my child was telling me off kilter, even my coworkers were like, Danielle, like, you're a little
Mhm.
off.
Mhm.
That's that should have been my clue to, reach out a little bit more than what I
Mhm.
had. I was still reaching out. I've accessed talk therapy, I've accessed all kinds of stuff. However, there's moments where I would say, no, I wasn't. Those dark moments were what is when I wasn't. And I couldn't find the light because I
Yeah.
was so dark and so angry.
Mhm. Mhm.
And thank you for saying that, Danielle, because I also think that yeah, anger is so present. And on the flip side of that is like numbness,
Yeah.
right? Just like disassociating, keeping really, really busy so that you don't actually feel anything.
Mhm.
Um, I think that would be another really, really telltale. They say like people experiencing loss, right, are the busiest people you'll ever meet, right? Because and that's a big red flag, because if we're that busy, it's usually we're trying to avoid feeling.
100% can 100% relate to that after in my grieving process. Absolutely. And so I appreciate you sharing that, because it's like, whether again symptoms of some sort, where it's just like you had said, Aditi, as well, and Danielle, they're persistent, they're almost getting in the way of the quality of life. And sometimes we simply, it's just about shining the light and say, okay, where's the next step from here? And so I want to circle back on, because I sometimes I ask 13 questions in one. And so I want to circle back to community, and what are some ways that a friend, a family member, colleague can be of service, some things that are really supportive. And obviously this is different for everyone, but again, speaking generally. And then on the flip side, what are some things that you just don't want to say to someone who is in this process?
I can speak to the what are some helpful things, and then maybe Danielle can speak on the what not to say. There's a lot of those. I think that that's the question, Celine, that we get asked probably the most, which I love because it really shows like a movement for people to better support others, and so that it always makes me very happy to get that question. I like to say is the number one thing to do is to be there, right? So we as humans are not always going to have the perfect thing to say, and we
Mhm.
don't need to have the perfect thing to say. But what we can do is be there, and we don't have to physically be there, because sometimes when families are experiencing loss, they need that alone time. But by being there, you don't need to always physically be there. You could send a meal. You could send a skip the dishes gift card. You could drop off a Starbucks on their doorstep. You could send a card, just something that lets them know that you're there and you're thinking of them.
Mm.
Sending a text, right? I'm thinking of you. Not
Mhm.
asking like the generic, like, how are you today? What can I do for you?
Mhm.
because when, as you know, Celine, you've expressed that you've navigated your own grief journey. When you're in the throes of grief, you don't know what you need.
Yeah, you're like, I don't know what I need from me right now.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I don't know anything right
Yeah.
now. So
Yeah.
asking someone what they need is not necessarily helpful.
Yeah.
Sorry, one second. I'm so sorry. And so actually, like, just showing up in those kind of ways, like, I'm thinking of you. The other piece of it is, don't shy away because you're uncomfortable, right? Because that ends up what happens, especially when it's baby loss, child loss related. People are like, I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to say the wrong thing. I also don't want to make them feel uncomfortable or more sad. But in not bringing it up, it actually makes families feel more sad, because it makes us feel like our experience and our children have been forgotten. So bringing it up, if it's Mother's Day, Father's Day, a birthday, whatever, bringing it up, acknowledging it, and speaking that child's name, if they named their baby, and if they didn't, still, like, on Mother's Day, like, thinking of all of, like, you and all of your children. That's a really tangible, easy way of being there for somebody. And again, it's about being there and kind of sitting in your own discomfort without necessarily having to or trying to fix their pain, because nothing you do is going to fix their pain. So we should just stop trying. But what will ease some of that pain is having somebody, like, sit with you and let you talk about the things that society doesn't really let us talk about.
Oof, that's so good, because it's so true. Even I've been on both sides of and then you're like, I don't want to say the right thing. And that's even helpful for me to know, right? Is thinking about all of you and all of your children. And that's okay to say, because, I would think, do I say this? Do I not? Right? Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that acknowledgement, I think, is the biggest piece of what to do. What not to do, there's lots. However, I guess the biggest one when we're talking with loss families, so whether it's miscarriage, stillbirth, infant loss, is to minimize it by saying, well, you can have another one. You can have another child, because we will never replace that child. Some families will go on and never have another child after their loss because of infertility, cost, all kinds of reasons. Some do, but that doesn't mean that child that died is no less important. And that's what I heard a lot is, well, you should be grateful you have Kat. It's okay. And Kat is my teenager. Oh, well, you've had another one, so you should be grateful. You got your, quote, rainbow baby. You should be grateful. It's good, right? 10 years later, you're good. Well, I'm not. And I'm not an oddity. I am the community. When we're talking about the loss of a child, I am that community. There's not one parent that wants their child to die. And so when we try to replace me, like, oh, but you can have another one. Oh, well, you should be grateful that your oldest one. You should be grateful for your health. Don't get me wrong. I'm very grateful for those children. I am very grateful for my health. Please don't diminish the loss that I've experienced, because that loss has impacted my partner, my child, the whole family. Because loss doesn't just affect the birthing person or the partner, it affects the grandparents, the children, the aunts, the uncles, you name it. For myself, that impact was quite large. And that impact 10 years later, because we're coming up on the 10th anniversary in February, is still there. So, it's, words like, I'm so sorry. Those are great words. However, they don't hold a lot. When I heard I'm so sorry, I would just get very angry because I was like, great, you're very sorry. So am I. Now let's move. Like, come
Yeah.
on. Like, this is a child's life we're talking about. We're not talking about the fact that I spilt my coffee. So we're using words like Aditi shared, like, sitting in the discomfort, using words like, thank you for sharing your story. I can relate to that, or I can understand how that might feel like that. The best people in the first year of my loss were the people that just came over with coffee and just let me talk, or we'd go for a walk and just let me talk. None of the people around me had ever experienced loss. However, just letting me talk, or bringing me coffee, or dropping dinner off at my doorstep, even months later, even years later, every once in a while, somebody will drop a meal on our doorstep around our daughter's anniversary of her passing. And it's like, wow, like, this is super impactful. We feel that love. I don't need the support I needed year 1, year 2, year 3. However, just that acknowledgement is so important to our grief journey.
Wow. And I appreciate that, because it's so true. It's nothing and no one is going to fix it. There's no amount of gratitude that's going to fix it. It's just that presence and acknowledgement, and that community. So important. Thank you so much. And lastly, if a family has gone through this, maybe even multiple times, yet they still do want to have a baby, and of course, anxiety, grief, like all of that can still be on their mind and heart, what advice would you have to a family who still wants to try again and has this past behind them?
I would say to show up and do the work, do the grief work. Yeah, there's no way around this. We have to move through it. And so allowing yourself that time and space to actually go through it, feeling your feelings, gaining the community, getting the tools to help support you as you move through it. A lot of people want to fast forward to when they're pregnant again, and they don't spend enough time in the doing of the work, in the healing, in all of that work, because it's uncomfortable and it sucks. Let's be honest. It's awful to do that work. However, if you're going to try to skip over that, just like that uncomfortable, hard stuff, it will catch up to you inevitably. And then now you will be pregnant again and also doing that work at the same time. So that would be my biggest advice, is do the work before you continue into that trying to conceive. So your doctors might say physically you're good to go. Really checking in with your heart and asking yourself, am I in a place to welcome the possibility of loss again into my heart, and make a decision from that place.
So powerful. And I think, and Danyelle, I'd love to get your also, just from your experience that you've been sharing. So as I'm sure we've all experienced, that grief is not linear. Find it almost to be cyclical in some strange way. And so with that same question in mind, you still have, this wound that might not ever go away. Maybe, I don't know. But is there also anything that you've experienced with, with your second child, for example, Danyelle, is there anything that you can also share on that?
I can say that I didn't do the work prior to my last pregnancy. And so because I didn't do the work, I did disassociate a lot of the pregnancy, where I was protecting myself from the loss. I went into the pregnancy with the attitude of, if we get a living child, this is what we'll do. Every moment it was like, if we get a living child. There was no nursery, there was no celebrations, there was no nothing, because I just wanted to get to that end point. And what happened is I lost out on that last pregnancy. I will never be pregnant again. That is a choice my partner and I made after the delivery of our third daughter. there's too many risks involved for myself, for the child. It just does not make sense. And I lost all the celebration and excitement that I felt with the first 2 pregnancies because I was in this, if she lives. I went through the whole delivery saying, I just want a live baby, so do whatever you need to do. I never kind of sat back and did the work. It was after her delivery and after I was still in this quote funk that I went, whoa, hold back. There needs to be a lot of work to be done. And I waited just about 18 months after Emelina passed away before I got pregnant again, because in my mind, I needed to be ready physically, mentally, and quote, I was ready, but I wasn't. I wasn't ready for what that pregnancy would look like and what it's like to come home with a live baby, because you spend your whole pregnancy preparing for, if this baby's alive, well, then they give them to you and you're like, whoa, what do I do now?
Yeah.
I forgot to prepare. I didn't prepare myself for the emotions, or even for myself. I didn't even prepare a nursery. So I was like, I had just enough stuff to get us through. And it was like, wait, we now have a baby. And now what do we do? So I think for me, it's really doing that work. It's really, really hard to not want to get pregnant and to do it all over again, because you just want that baby. But that work is so important to be able to enjoy that pregnancy, to go into that next pregnancy with love and not fear. Because I went into it with fear, and now I look back and I'm like, wow, only I could have loved those experiences. What a different pregnancy that would have been.
Wow, that was beautifully said. And often I find that our own circumstances and challenges can be cultivated to add value to others' lives, which is exactly what you do for both of you. I appreciate that. This has been, I mean, there's so many other questions I would love to ask you, and really for the ladies listening, or the people listening on this call, what would be the best way to get resources and be able to connect with you?
So we have lots of resources. So you can check us out on our website, which is www.pilsc.org, which connects you to everything from our social media to our helpline, as well as it connects you to our podcast, where you can hear more about our stories and other stories of individuals who have experienced loss. We have stories right from grandparents' perspectives to parents' perspectives, so you can connect with us any of those ways. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And ladies, is there anything else that you would love listeners to know about, whether it's your work or about themselves during this time?
That you're not alone. I think that's the biggest thing. I think the community that we've built and that we continue to build is amazing, and you're not alone. As much as it feels like you're alone, there is a whole community out here waiting to meet you when you are ready.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the information and love and guidance that you've shared on this podcast. And I will link everything that you have just mentioned, the website and social media, all of that in the show notes. So thank you both. Really appreciate you being here on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Please give the show a 5-star review if you feel like you learned something new today. All of the mentioned links will be in the show notes. And also, are we connected on Instagram? Find me over at _lusciousliving_ and come say hi. See you next episode.